Let's go ahead and get started with that Chris Hedges story because I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what's happening with Alice Walker. Now, lover or hater, I received an email last week informing me that Alice Walker actually is being censored. I'm going to get into that story in just a second. It's an email that was going around, and that drew my attention to the story. And that's how I saw that Chris Hedges actually wrote an article about this recently. I think it was actually the most recent article that he wrote. So I do want to go ahead and get into that story. So let's get started with that. So this is from Chris Hedges, you guys. It's called Chris Hedges, Alice Walker, and the Price of Conscience. Listen to this. Alice Walker was disinvited to the Bay Area Book Festival after Zionist groups threatened to carry out protests. The public and presenters are complicit in her blacklisting if they attended. So here we go. And there's a picture of Alice Walker there. And of course, it says, "Thought police do not cross." So let's see what Chris had to say about this. There is a steep price to pay for having a conscience, and more importantly, the courage to act on it. The hounds of hell pin you to the cross, hammering nails into your hands and feet as they grin like the Cheshire cat and mouth bromides about respect for human rights, freedom of expression, and diversity. I watched this happen for some time to Alice Walker, one of the most gifted and courageous writers in America. Walker, who was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for her novel, The Color Purple, has felt the bitter sting of racism. She refuses to be silent about the plight of the oppressed, including the Palestinians. So let me come out for just a second. I got to comment on this. For those who are not aware, Alice Walker is famously known for her book, The Color Purple, which was actually a movie as well. In that movie, there's Oprah Winfrey, there's Whoopi Goldberg, Danny Glover's also in that movie. It's actually a big movie. Alice Walker, over the years, she has been very vocal, and some people don't like the things that she says. The comment I mentioned to you earlier, someone mentioned that they feel like she's been destructive towards like Black men. She's not for everybody. I'm just going to be honest with you. But I told you guys I believe in free speech. I'm not for censorship. And the way I see it is if you don't like what she has to say, you don't have to read her work. You don't have to even attend this book festival, actually. So let's go back into this story. Whenever I come out with a book or anything that will take me before the public, the world, I'm assailed as this person I don't recognize. This is coming from Alice Walker. If I tried to keep track of all the attacks over the decades, I wouldn't be able to keep working. I am happy people are standing up. It is all of us, not just me. They are trying to shut us down, shut us up, erase us. That reality is what is important. Now, I do want to comment here for a second and remind you that it was just a couple weeks ago that Chris Hedges was censored, along with Tara Reid, Lee Camp, and Abby Martin. So it really doesn't matter at this point how big you are. It doesn't matter if you're an award-winning author or journalist. At this point, they are willing to shut up anyone. Anyone who speaks in a way that they don't think they should speak, and anyone who is preaching a narrative that they do not approve of. That is what is happening here. Now, Alice Walker has been very vocal about the Palestinians. She's spoken out multiple times for support for Palestine. Now, who have we also seen this happen to where they spoke out in support of Palestine and they were ridiculed? In fact, they were refused tenure. That happened to Cornel West. That is why Cornel West was denied tenure at Harvard, even though he met the qualifications, because he spoke out in support of Palestine. So let's go back in. The Bay Area Book Festival delivered the latest salvo against Walker. The organizers disinvited her from the event, because she praised the writings of the New Age author David Icke and called his book "And the Truth Shall Set You Free" brave. Icke has denied critics charges of anti-Semitism. The festival organizers twisted themselves into contortions to say they were not charging Walker with anti-Semitism. She was banned because she lauded a controversial writer, who I suspect few members of the committee have read, the poet and writer honoree Fanon Jeffers, who Walker was to interview, withdrew from the festival in protest. Walker, a supporter of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, this is also known as BDS, you guys. She's a supporter of that movement, has been a very public advocate for Palestinian rights and a critic of Israel for many years. Her friendship with Icke has long been part of the public record. She hid nothing. It is not as if the festival organizers suddenly discovered a dark secret about Walker. They sought to capitalize on her celebrity, and then, when they felt the heat from the Israel lobby, capitulated to the mob to humiliate her. I don't know these people. This is coming from Alice Walker. It feels like the South. You know they're out there in the community and they have their positions, but all you see are sheets. That's what this is. It's like being back in the South. Let's talk about banning people and banning books for just a second. So here we go. So this has been happening recently. It's been happening in schools, libraries. They're removing books that they didn't seem to have a problem with until recent conflicts abroad. I have to be careful what I say on here now, you guys. So now you have someone, Alice Walker, a proclaimed writer, award-winning writer. Now she's the target. I don't believe that books should be banned. I feel like I'm back in that movie Footloose when they were burning the books and said the kids can't read the books and they didn't want the kids to dance in the town. That movie came out in the 80s. It's 2022. Why are we going back? Now, you don't have to agree with everything that Alice Walker says. You don't have to read Alice Walker's books. But to tell someone that they cannot attend because you disagree with their take on foreign policy, this is a whole new level of censorship. Just a couple of weeks ago, they were removing people's YouTube channels. They removed people from RT. They have been removing people from Spotify as well. Lee Camp is one of them. Now they're trying to tell people what they can and what they cannot attend. Does anyone else see the big concern here? Does anyone else see the big problem that we're facing when it comes to censorship? This has gone too far. This is why when I say I'm pro-free speech, I'm pro-free speech. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that someone says. But when you start to censor certain works of literature, when you start to censor certain topics, this is just the beginning of a catastrophe. Because eventually it gets to the point where they don't want you to say anything. Look at how I have to censor myself when I'm on the show. Look at what happened to Jackson Hinkle recently. Jackson Hinkle was banned from YouTube because he was talking about a conflict abroad. They don't want us to say anything. So they pick here and there and here and there. And before you know it, it's going to get to the point where, what can we say? I'm going to go to some of the comments and I'm going to go back into the article. I just saw one. Lauren, there is a reason freedom of speech is the First Amendment to the Constitution. That's a good point. Joe, yes, Arsenio Hall got blackballed for years just for having Louis Farrakhan on his show. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that, but that's true. I don't know how old everyone is in the chat or if they ever saw the Arsenio Hall show. I was little when that show was on, but I remember watching Arsenio Hall with my parents. And I remember when he brought Louis Farrakhan on. And I remember my parents saying they're going to end his show now because they didn't want him to bring him on. Again, you don't have to agree with what Louis Farrakhan says, but are you going to kill someone's entire show because you didn't agree with the guest that came on? Thanks for the super chat, Delthea Simmons. Don't ban debate. If your worldview is so fragile that any idea that disagrees with it must be outlawed and hidden, you need a new worldview. Thanks for the super chat. That's a good point, Delthea. Good point. Linwood said, see, you can't ban according to the First Amendment. So what you're going to do is try to censor the people in the private sector, not the government sector. That's a good point, Linwood. Juliet said Arsenio Hall has some of the best interviews in the 90s. Yeah, he does. He does. All right, let's go back into this article. Chris Hedges goes on to say, banning writers because of books they like or find interesting nullifies the whole point of a book festival. Should I be banned because I admire Louis Ferdinand Celine's masterpieces Journey to the End of the Night, Death on the Installment Plan, and Castle to Castle, despite his virulent anti-Semitism, which even after World War II, he refused to relinquish? Should I be banned for liking Joseph Heller's Catch-22, which I've recently reread, and which is rabidly misogynistic? I'm sorry, you guys, I can't talk tonight. It's been a busy day. Misogynistic. Should I be banned for loving William Butler Yeats, who, like Ezra Pound, many of his poems I have also committed to memory, was a fascist collaborator? Should I be banned because I revere Hannah Arendt? I think Chris Hedges is really trying to get me through these names. Hannah Arendt, whose attitudes towards African Americans were paternalistic at best and arguably racist? Should I be banned because I cherished books by C.S. Willis, Norman Mailer, and D.H. Lawrence who were homophobic? We might as well sweep clean library shelves if the attitudes of writers we read mean we are denied a right to speak. This portion down here too. Go down here. Organizers of the festival attacked Walker for her poem, "It Is Our Frightful Duty." They accused Walker of channeling Ick's alleged anti-Semitism into her writing, as if Walker is unable to think for herself. The attack on the poem, which is gross misreading of its intent, exposes the lie that Walker's position on Israel and Palestine had nothing to do with her being disinvited. And this is the excuse, too. I do want to jump in and say that this was something Harvard tried to allude to about them not giving Cornel West tenure. They tried to allude to the fact that, well, these are the requirements and the qualifications that we have for someone to receive tenure at Harvard. Not every professor that, applies for tenure here receives tenure. This is a very competitive institution. Harvard language. But I think we all know it was because he supported Palestine. This happened immediately after that. Let's be real. Bryce said, typical, I figured this would happen. That 100 million talks, though. Juliet said, the point of writing is to say things that haven't been said before. You don't have to agree. Exactly. Exactly. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. That helps me with the algorithm. Lawrence said that Chris is certainly well read. When I think of some of the books that we read in school, I mean, did I agree with all the books, all the literature that we read, that I read in undergrad? I was broadcast journalism and English major. So I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books. Some of them I had to read multiple times because I was taking a different English class and they gave us the same work of literature to read again. And I'm like, at this point, I've read this book by 3 times. But this isn't the first time I think that Alice Walker has been under attack. I mentioned The Color Purple. That book actually received quite controversy. Controversy. I told you I can't talk tonight. It was somewhat controversial for the time. And so was the movie when it came out. Because one of the things that I noticed in the movie The Color Purple, it wasn't just the racial divide. You got to remember, this was a long time ago when this took place. It wasn't just because of the racial divide. It was the class issue that occurred not just between white people and black people, but the class issue that occurred between black people. The Color Purple highlighted that. The Color Purple highlighted that when you had a character like Celie, even among wealthy black people, she was still looked down upon by those people, even though they're both black. And this is something I've told people before. A lot of times for black people who are wealthy, they're class loyalists first. And you see that throughout the movie constantly. It's like she's looked down upon. She's not taken seriously because she doesn't come from money. She came from nothing. She was really poor. And then you have like the bougie Danny Glover's father in the movie. He's very bougie. He doesn't think she's good enough for his son. And he's constantly like so nasty towards her. And that, I think that was the first movie that really opened up my eyes to the class issue that we have. Now, granted, it took place many decades ago, but we still have that problem today. Let's go back into the article here. Unfortunately, Miss Walker was not only promoted Ick's ideas widely on her own blog and in interviews, but they may have influenced her own writing. Now, this is coming from The Festival. Miss Walker's 2017 poem, "It is Our Frightful Duty to Study the Talmud," encourages people to use Google and YouTube to follow the trail of the Talmud. As its poison belated wins its way into our collective consciousness, some of what you find will sound too crazy to be true. Unfortunately, those bits are likely to be true. A New York Magazine essay by writer Nyla Burton describes her reaction to Walker's support of Ick and this poem. This poem calls out these hate-filled religious texts, all of it, the Christian, the Jewish, the Muslims, even the Buddhists, all of it without exception. At the root, Walker reminds us in the poem that these texts have been used throughout millennia to sanctify subjugation, dehumanization, and murder. Slaveholders defended the enslavement of blacks by citing numerous passages in the Old and the New Testament, including Paul's letter to the Ephesians, were equating slaveholders with God. Paul writes, "Slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear of trembling in sincerity of heart as to Christ." Let's go down here. Walker exaggerates this religious chauvinism and mythology. She warns that theocracies which sacralize state power are dangerous. In the poem, she highlights passages in the Talmud used to condemn those outside the faith. And the article goes on and on. I don't want to read the entire article because that kind of defeats the purpose of you reading this article. But Chris Hedges also has this on his Substack as well. But the point that I wanted to highlight here as well, this is the statement that comes from the festival. Our decision to disinvite Miss Walker had nothing to do with her position on Palestine, her voice as a Black woman writer, or her right to speak her mind freely. We honor all of those things. We also do not hold that she is anti-Semitic. To be pro-Palestinian does not mean a person is anti-Semitic, just as to be Jewish does not mean that one is anti-Palestine. Our decision was based purely on Ms. Walker's inexplicable ongoing endorsement of David Icke, a conspiracy theorist who dangerously promulgates such beliefs as that Jewish people bankrolled Hitler, caused the 2008 global financial crisis, staged the September 11 attacks, and more. So let's talk about this for just a second. This is interesting. Again, I told you guys I'm anti-censorship. I'm pro-free speech. I don't have to agree with everything that's said. But I just feel like, who are they going to ban next? How are we going backwards in this country? 2022. How are we going backwards? I'm wondering if I should try to see if I can get in touch with Alice Walker. I wonder if she'll be willing to come on. I should try to do that. Bryce said, nah, Sabs, I like you reading. I hate reading. LOL. Oh, I love to read. She's Black said the establishment is slowly losing the information battle, so they are doing everything they can to hold on to it. I think that's what's happening too. I don't think they like to hear independent voices. They don't want people to look towards other resources. Gamer and Ganja for Life said Chris Hedges is great. I agree. I agree. Brian said Icke has been banned by the media, disparaged, made fun of. He supported, I can't say that on here, but in free speech. Oh boy. Juliet said settler colonialism is so fragile. I'm sorry, you guys. My wheels on my chair keep moving. I need to get a chair that doesn't move. It's the truth. Bill Bradley. Bill Bradley said it's the same tactic liberals use with the right. Anti-Semites oppose Israel because they hate Jews. So everyone that opposes Israel gets painted the same way. Racists voted for Trump, so all Trump voters are racist. Same logic. This is the same. This is the go-to tactic for liberals. Paint in broad strokes based on partial truth. That's a good point. Thank you for saying that, Bill. That's a good point. That's what they do. That's what they do. You ever notice, like, I noticed something whenever people talk about the military or they talk about American patriotism, more so in reference to the military, people tend to picture what that individual looks like, not realizing that the military is incredibly diverse. I know my dad was in the military. I was an army kid. I grew up constantly around soldiers. That's also the reason why I'm anti-war, because I've had those experiences. I know what that's like. So it's true. People tend to do this. They'll say, like Bill Bradley said, all Trumpers are racist. Everybody who supports Palestine is anti-Semitic. It's ridiculous how they just paint people with a broad brush that way, but it does happen.